I knew all the Met fans so smiley and happy. Joshua Silverberg saying we could win a World Series this year. Tyler Harrison taking shots at the New York Yankees, not going after Max Scherzer. And what do we hear? We hear injuries. Injuries before the season even starts. Jacob deGrom was feeling tightness in his arm and his shoulder. He needed an MRI. He gets his MRI on Friday. What do they find?
Inflammation in his right shoulder. This is a new one, a stress reaction in his scapula. Leave it to the Mets to make injuries I never heard of before.
Well, when you have a stress ball in your scapula, it's a bad injury. With your scapula, you're using your shoulder to release the ball. You're using a lot of your shoulder. A lot of your power is coming from your legs, but it's also coming from your shoulder. With this problem, it's going to make him at least sit out for 4 weeks. He could be out 6 to 8 weeks. Even with spring training, he's going to have another spring training, so he might be out another 2 weeks after that. This is a bad injury for the New York Mets before the season started, especially with the depth in their rotation. They don't have a lot of depth. They added some pieces that they thought with Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer healthy. This roster and this rotation will be one of the best in the league. Max Scherzer speaks out and says that he feels good even with tightness in his hamstring. That's not a good sign. Anybody that goes to the Mets, it doesn't matter how healthy they are. And by the way, Charlie Slows, he had the breaking news about Max Scherzer. If nobody knows who Charlie Slows is, Charlie is the voice of the Nationals. He knows Max very, very well. He was the one that told me there was tightness in his hamstring and that it could be a significant situation, because when you have hamstring problems as a pitcher, you use your legs to release the ball. And as a 38-year-old, he's not going to have the strength or the ability to heal like he did when he was 28.
Definitely not. It's something that over time, with the amount of innings, with the amount of consecutive starts for a while before he was dealing with all these injury issues recently in the shortened season, that it's going to catch up to you eventually.
You're seeing it before he even steps on the mound for the Mets. It's crazy.
When he signed with the Mets initially, it was thought of to be elbow fatigue that he was going to have an issue with. That's why he missed his last start of the NLCS against the Braves. It seemed like the elbow fatigue is finally gone. Now he has a hamstring issue, which for somebody that is a powerful pitcher, a big guy, a guy that relies on his velocity a lot, which is driven from your legs as well as your arms in the rotation of the pitch, that's going to be very hard to be able to get that kind of top velocity on a consistent basis. Now, hopefully the Mets manage this right, which they never do with injuries as it is. Trusting a training staff that has been having these players get hurt that haven't been injury prone in the past, that's not something you can necessarily trust. And also, with all the pitching depth that they lost in the offseason, now these new guys are going to have to take on a bigger role. Whether it's Chris Bassett, who they just traded for from Oakland, whether it's Tyler McGill, who pitched well at times in the second half, but then fell apart in August and September. Whether it's David Peterson, who was a first-round pick that didn't look good last year. They lost some pieces in their bullpen, too. No more Aaron Loop, who pitched phenomenally last year. No more Juris Familia. A tough task for Buck Showalter if these guys are out for a longer period of time. Jacob deGrom out for at least a month, and Max Scherzer might miss their opening day start. Nothing confirmed yet, but still not a good sign, even if he does have to battle through that kind of injury with a hamstring.
Especially as a starting pitcher who usually uses his legs and his power from it. It's not a good sign for the New York Mets already, as the season will be starting in a week, and you don't have your best pitcher. Your second best pitcher, who you paid a lot of money, he's the highest paid pitcher in Major League history. He's making $45 million a year. He's got problems. He's really been healthy his whole career besides last year.
Right, up until the 2020 shortened season.
And now you're seeing his age is starting to hit, and I told Met fans, you have to be worried to paying a guy a 3-year contract worth about $140 million for 3 years. That's a lot of money for one guy, a guy that's 38 years old. And yes, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball for the last 11 years. But it scares you when he goes to the Mets, because guess what? Everybody that goes to the Mets always wind up on the DL. When you look at the Mets right now, this is not a good sign. And if you're going into the season knowing that your best pitcher might not pitch until the second month, that should be scary by itself, because it's going to take him a while to get his feet under him, to get his arm strength back. He might not be at 100% until probably June or July. And that's scary, because by then the Mets could be out of a playoff contention. The Braves are a lot better than they were last year, even losing Freeman. They added a lot of pieces. They added relief pitching. That rotation is good, and they have a great lineup. even without Freeman. Acuna will not start the season, but he'll be in the roster, probably 40 games in.
And he was supposed to be out until the All-Star break, and now he's probably going to come back in May.
This roster is fantastic, and Swanson's become a great hitter. Albies is as good as anybody at second base. So they're a scary team, one of the best infields in all of baseball, even losing Freeman. They added a Gold Glove type of first baseman from the A's. Power, too. Absolutely not going to miss a beat this year. The Braves are the best team, in my eyes, in the National League East.
Yeah, the Mets now are going to have a tough dilemma, too, where how are they going to manage pitching when Max Scherzer plays and when Jacob deGrom comes back?
I think Max Scherzer will play.
He'll play?
Yes.
I just worry diminishment of the performance, if and when that will end up coming, and how the Mets are going to manage it in the beginning of the season, because they have to realize that they're going to have to win games in so many different ways in the month of April, at least to stay afloat. The Braves are a better team. The Mets can stay competitive with the extra playoff team now at Dodgers, obviously the best team in baseball on paper. A potential bounce back from the Padres, who are a very talented team. And then you got the National League Central with the Brewers and the Cardinals. The wild card is going to be still hard, but still manageable. So they can't be over-aggressive with Max Scherzer and try to use too much innings out of him where it could, one, diminish him performance, and two, make it where it could get fatigue, and then you overwork him for later in the season when you might need to win those games down the stretch. Because we've seen the Mets do this over the years with veteran pitchers. Look at the diminishment of Johan Santana, one of the best pitchers in baseball when he was with the Twins. Came to the Mets, he pitched well his first 2 years there, then had all his injury issues. Same kind of thing with Pedro Martinez and Tom Glavine. And then they also did it with young pitchers too. Look at what happened with Matt Harvey, in addition to the off-field issues. The only one that really got better following his major injuries was Zach Wheeler, and then Zach Wheeler now is pitching phenomenally with the Phillies. They have to figure out some way to make it work throughout the season. Hopefully Buck Showalter has a better say with that kind of thing. He's managed much worse pitching staffs in the past and made it work to get some winning teams.
And then there's the other New York team, which everybody expected to start a little slow because they have to figure who's going to be the number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 hitter in this loaded roster. And it seems like they have it all set up already. I think DJ LeMahieu will be batting 1. Aaron Judge will be batting 2. Josh Donaldson will be batting 3. Giancarlo will be batting 4. Joey Gallo batting 5. Rizzo and the rest of that roster. This is a loaded roster. And if Josh Donaldson, I said this with Charlie. I told Charlie, I said, what do you think about Josh Donaldson? He said, if Josh Donaldson stays healthy in this lineup, he's never been in a better lineup than this. He is going to be a better hitter. He's going to see better pitches. He's hit in Yankee Stadium. With this roster, even Isaiah Kinner, who's played very, very well this spring training.
Gonzalez, too.
Yeah, Marwin Gonzalez. They gave him a minor league contract. It was a big move. And that's something that Brian Cashman always wins. He finds these guys that nobody wants. They come to the Yankees like Gio Urshela, and they become stars again, or they become better players. Marwin Gonzalez is a good player. He's won a World Series before. He's been on good teams. He's an all-around great defender. He can play multiple positions. He can play the outfield. He can play third base. He can play shortstop. He can play second base. He can even play first base. So Marwin Gonzalez, adding a player like that, if he can figure out his hitting situation, this lineup is going to be as good as any lineup in baseball. Now, the pitching staff, we all know they're not the Mets. They don't have Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom, but they do have Garrett Cole. And if you want to say Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom are the two best pitchers in baseball, Garrett Cole's right there with them. The Yankees have a number 1 who could win a Cy Young any year. Last year, he was runner-up in the Cy Young Award. With that rotation, they got to hope Severino stays healthy. Certain pitchers get back into position. Montgomery, Tylon, who played very well in the second half last year, and even Gill when he gets called up. These guys are going to have to produce. If they produce and they figure out what this bullpen is, the Yankees could be as good as any team in the American League, especially with that lineup.
This is a very depth-driven team in comparison to teams of the Yankees past, where it seemed like it was more star-driven and they had the pitching to make it work in some instances, like the big names, but didn't have the overall depth. Now they have a little more depth if they can stay healthy.
And they have defense, too.
A lot of good defense. You mentioned Kiner-Falefa. Aaron Hicks, if he could stay healthy, is a phenomenal defensive center fielder. And then Marwin Gonzalez, too.
Joey Gallo. Josh Donaldson is a great third baseman, too. They're a good defensive team.
The depth where they don't have to force everyone to play all these different positions and wear themselves out throughout the year, too. Marwin Gonzalez could play not center field, but the other 2 corner outfield spots and play both middle infield spots. DJ LeMahieu played phenomenally all over the place. Joey Gallo, who's been a Gold Glove.
Anthony
outfielder.
Rizzo.
They have all these different options to maneuver depth, and we'll have to see if they could do it to the best competing with the rest of the division, because their division is still loaded, but the Yankees have the depth on paper to make that kind of thing work. Yes.
You don't think the Yankees have the best lineup in all of the American League?
The question will be with them is, can they reduce the strikeouts? Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton have always struck out a ton. Joey Gallo, 200 hitter that strikes out 200 times.
He's the worst one out of all.
Right. He's the most extreme condition, because Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton can still hit for good batting averages, but we haven't seen that yet from Joey Gallo in terms of making that leap of what he was supposed to be when he was called up as a young player. Yankee Stadium is a bandbox for the home runs, but can they grow their game to the next level? Because that's the thing that sometimes has held them back, where sometimes with the Yankees, one guy seems to carry their offense, and now with this kind of lineup, they don't have to. Remember stretches where Giancarlo Stanton was the only guy hitting, and then at the end of the season, Aaron Judge sometimes was the only guy hitting. Now they don't have to rely on that kind of thing when these guys are healthy, too. Josh Donaldson, not a big batting average guy, but on base percentage, good, powerful guy, can go the opposite field, too.
If he hits 260 and he gives you 30 home runs and 100 RBIs in that lineup, and he's going to see better pitches. You're going to see a lot of doubles. He's going to knock in even more RBIs than he has over the last couple of years. So we could see the old Josh Donaldson who won an MVP a couple of years ago.
And he's back in those American League East bandboxes again, which will help. Marwin Gonzalez has hit all throughout spring training so far, 412 batting average. And here's the big one. Kyle Higashioka now is going to be likely a starting catcher. Spring training, but he's not known for his offense. So at least if he gets a little bit of a spark going and at least can be a solid number 8 hitter, that's going to be a helpful.
He's a great defensive player.
Because he's a great defensive player. Garrett Cole's personal catcher that he's pitched the best with. And he's hitting 450, 5 home runs, 8 RBIs in spring training, which is a good sign. Now, we're not going to expect him to have these lethal offensive numbers we've seen of the Yankees catchers of the past.
If he gets 13 home runs.
If he hits 240, 13 home runs, that's fine.
Yeah, 13 home runs and 50 RBIs. That's all you need from a catcher who could play dominant defense, who could throw you out at second, run a pitching staff, run the bullpen. So this is a guy that can control these pitchers and make sure that these pitchers pitch as well as we expect them to pitch. So the Yankees, to me, are in position better than the New York Mets because you know what this roster is going to produce. You know what this roster is going to be as long as they stay healthy. If they stay healthy, they can win the division, the American League East, easy. The best division in all of baseball when you have the Blue Jays with that lineup and that pitching staff, and you have the Red Sox with that lineup and an okay pitching staff, and then there's the Rays, and even Baltimore, they have some good young players as well, and they'll compete, because if Baltimore played in the National League right now, they're a borderline 70, 80 win team. In the American League East, you got to play these powerhouse teams 16, 17 times a year. You don't expect them to win a lot of games when you're playing the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Rays, and the Blue Jays. It's a very impossible thing for the Orioles right now. They're not the Buck Showalter.
No, that team had a very good lineup. They had okay pitching, but still solid enough to get them through when they were at their peak. But yeah, definitely still in rebuilding mode right now. But the Blue Jays, they got the starting pitching, they got the lineup. The question will be with their bullpen, most of all. The Red Sox, they have some good pitchers, but they don't have the same level of depth that a team like the Rays do or a team like the Blue Jays do. Chris Sale might be coming back. We'll see if he gets back to his form. Nathan Eovaldi's still there. They got good relievers that emerged for them last year. Will they be able to do it again? The Rays, new players that come up. They always find them. They make them work. Can they overcome the payroll like they've done in years past? I don't know if they win the division again like they did last year, but they're still going to be a tough out, too.